Hi, I'm Albert and welcome to AlauzSignal. This episode I'll be giving my Alder Lake recommendations. Intel has finally caught up with AMD, and you're here probably because you're looking to build a new Alder Lake system and are gathering the best information for what's the best for you. So let's take a deeper look into Alder Lake together. So what exactly is Alder Lake? Let me give you the quick rundown. If you already know, you can just skip ahead to the performance metrics. Intel's 12th generation CPU has the Alder Lake codename, and its upcoming 13th gen CPU has Raptor Lake codename, and that's coming in 2022. So Alder Lake for desktop is not just a new architecture, but also Intel's first node shrink from 14 nanometer since August 2015. Yes, it's been 6 years since there has been any node shrink from Intel on the desktop space. And you can see why AMD Ryzen processors have been selling so well, especially for high performance gaming desktops. So don't be fooled by the Intel 7 process name. This is actually Intel's 10 nanometer super thin process. And the reason why it's such a capable processor is because its transistor density is roughly on par with TSMC's 7 nanometer process without UV, or better known as the extreme ultraviolet lithography. And Intel has also implemented a mixed design with powerful cores or P cores and efficient cores or E cores. The P cores are hyper-threaded, means they can run two sets of instructions at the same time, while the E cores can only run a single set of instructions at once. And the new CPUs support both the newly launched DDR5 as well as the established DDR4 RAM. PCI Generation 5 will be useful for NVIDIA and AMD's next upcoming technologies. They also support Thunderbolt 4 and USB C and Wi-Fi 6E, which is actually pretty good. Along with the CPU, the Z690 motherboards have been released, and they can be a bit confusing to navigate, with high-end boards supporting only DDR5 and low to mid-end boards supporting both DDR4 and DDR5. There are currently no motherboards that support both DDR4 and DDR5 together on the same motherboard, so you got to decide whether or not you want DDR5 before you actually buy the motherboard. As for Thunderbolt 4 support, it is limited to only the high-end motherboards, meaning if you want Thunderbolt 4, you definitely have to go with DDR5 RAM. With DDR RAM prices at least double or even triple or even quadruple the price of DDR4, this is something that you might have to consider. As for performance, all Z690 motherboards are supposed to be able to run the 12900K at full power. But you should only be able to run the 12600K on the lower end boards due to lesser VRMs being used, or you might face like random shutdowns during heavy load. And please note that for the PCI Gen 5 support, only the top tier boards will have 2 times PCIe Gen 5 NVMe drives via the NVMe slot on the motherboard, or you have to use the Gen 5 NVMe drives on a slot in board. So don't buy the Gen 5 SSDs if your Z690 motherboards don't support it. Of the 3 CPUs launched, the top CPU is the i9 12900K with 8 P cores, and it has a max of 5.2 GHz and 8 E cores with a max of 3.9 GHz. The most notable is the power consumption, which goes up to 241 watt max. So please take note that the Intel now will allow the CPU to run at 241 watt max with no limits depending on the application you're using, and you will need the best water cooling systems in the market just to avoid overheating. So next is the i7 12700K with 8 E cores at 5 GHz and 4 E cores at 3.8 GHz. It means this has a little bit of overclocking headroom if you use water cooling, but if you use air cooling, there's really no headroom to overclock. And last but not least is the i5 12600K. It has 6 E-cores at 4.9 GHz and 4 E-cores at 3.7 GHz. This has the most headroom for overclocking even if you go with air cooling. So next I will go through the performance of these CPUs. Looking at the performance difference between the 12700K and the 12900K, you can see that the single-threaded performance is only a 1.2% difference between the two, but the 12900K is about 20% more powerful in multi-threaded applications thanks to double the efficiency core. Looking at the performance difference between the 12600K and the 12700K, you can see that single-threaded performance is only a 1.6% difference between the two, and the multi-threaded performance is where the 12700K pulls ahead by a large 31%. This also means the 12900K has a 2.9% advantage over the 12600K in single-threaded performance, while being 57% better at multi-threading, although you will have to pay about double the price of the 12600K. Now we reach the most important part of any review, especially my comparisons, which is the gaming benchmarks. Comparing across 10 games, it seems that the 12900K is only about 5% faster than the 12600K on average. So if you're buying an Alder Lake CPU mainly for gaming, it will not make any sense whatsoever to get anything higher than the 12600K because you have to pay double the price. And the fact that the 12600K and AMD's 5600X beats both previous generation flagships, the 11900K and the 10900K in gaming, it means that medium level PCs are beating previous generation maximum level PCs, which can only mean one thing. The competition between Intel and AMD is definitely heating up. Here's the TLDR. In conclusion, for gaming or general use, I highly recommend the 12600K with a DDR4 Z690 motherboard with two 16GB DDR4 3200 MHz RAM. This is the current sweet spot for Intel Alder Lake, as it is confirmed that 3200 MHz RAM is running at Year 1 and is cheaper than 3600 MHz RAM. If you're looking for productivity, I would still recommend a 5950X, as that CPU is much easier to maintain in terms of heat and is far more efficient in terms of power consumption. The 12900K needs a 360mm AIO water cooler to run at its full production capabilities, while the 5950X you can decide if you want to go air or water cooling, so you will have more options when you're planning your build. Thanks again for watching, and do subscribe if you're interested in PC hardware and software, as I'll be exploring Windows 11 and more PC hardware on my channel. Or if you want to know more about how to choose a gaming monitor, check out episode 3, where I give some useful tips on selecting your gaming monitor. Thank you, and I will have another comparison for you in a few weeks. Oh, it looks like someone's at the door. So looks like maybe I'll be seeing you again pretty soon. Bye bye.